a luxury hotel rotting in the Malaysian mountains, a forgotten Italian village brought back from the dead, and a futuristic seaside resort in Taiwan abandoned to ghosts and storms. 3 places, 3 stories, each revealing how human dreams can rise, collapse, or be reborn. Welcome to a journey through the world's most haunting lost places. High in the mist-covered mountains of Malaysia, just an hour's drive from the bustling capital of Kuala Lumpur, there stands a building that has earned an unsettling reputation. It is not centuries old, nor is it a ruined relic of a distant empire. Instead, it is a modern construction, barely 25 years in age. Yet its towering presence, weather-stained walls, and desolate corridors give the impression of something far older and far more disturbing. This is the Amber Court Hotel. Once envisioned as a luxury escape nestled in the cool mountain air, it is now whispered about as one of the scariest hotels in the world. Online booking sites still offer reservations, complete with polished photographs promising comfort and convenience. But the reviews tell a different story. Reviews that describe the place as creepy, unsettling, and best avoided. Our reporter, Paul Bobrovsky, decided to experience this enigmatic place for himself. With confirmed booking in hand, he made the drive into the highlands. But as the car wound higher into the mountains, visibility dropped. The clouds grew thick, the air heavy, and the silence of the roads only deepened the sense of foreboding. By the time Paul spotted the sign for Amber Court, he was already questioning whether he would actually stay the night. From the outside, the hotel looks less like a holiday retreat and more like a set from an apocalyptic film. 2 massive towers, 23 stories each, rise from the mountainside, their facades streaked with red stains that look disturbingly like dry blood. Balconies hang empty, paint peels from the walls, and the surrounding parking lot is littered with abandoned cars, many of them overgrown with moss. Some vehicles appear to have been left for years, their owners long gone. Venturing inside to the crumbling stairways and darkened corridors, Paul encountered a strange mix of life and decay. Rusting motorbikes sat abandoned, yet fresh laundry hung on improvised lines, fluttering in the damp underground air. Signs of habitation existed, but the place felt hollow, half alive, half dead. When he finally found a lobby, it was not the welcoming reception one might expect. Instead, the space had been transformed into a small shopping arcade, kiosks, barbers, and convenience stores tucked into corners of what was once meant to be a grand entrance hall. Here he met Shamsheet, a shopkeeper who's been running his small store for years. Sham explained that most of his customers were not tourists but local construction workers. For them, Amber Court provided cheap accommodation near the job sites in the highlands. But Sham also admitted something else. His voice dropped slightly when he said, "There are ghosts here. My friend once heard children's voices in the night, but there are no families here, no children at all. That's why I never leave my room after dark." This reputation, of course, only grew after Amber Court was used as the filming location for the Asian horror movie Haunted Hotel. For many visitors, the line between fiction and reality seemed to blur. Paul's own room, on the 22nd floor, turned out to be a strange surprise. Unlike the decay in the corridors, the apartment was clean, spacious, even furnished with a small kitchen. 2 balconies looked out across the mountains. But when clouds rolled in, the view disappeared entirely, leaving only a blanket of white mist. It was eerie, suffocating, and deeply unsettling. That night, as the wind howled through cracks in the building and doors rattled in their frames, Paul tried to sleep, but the hotel seemed alive, whispering in the darkness. The next day, he discovered he was not alone. Among the permanent residents was Malik, a 35-year-old taxi driver who had been living in Amber Court for over a year. Malik shared a room with 5 other men, each contributing to the rent of about €300 a month. He admitted that few taxi drivers like to come here after midnight, believing the place to be cursed. One particular room, on the infamous 13th floor, had been sealed for years after reports of paranormal activity. Malik shrugged when asked about the eerie red stains on the building's exterior. They weren't blood, he explained, but algae thriving in the region's humid climate. Yet the appearance was enough to spook outsiders. And over time, Amber Court gained a sinister reputation it could not escape. Still, Malik and his companions made do. They avoided going out after dark, prefer to pass their evenings playing cards together. For them, Amber Court was not a haunted hotel, but simply an affordable home in the mountains. And yet, even they admitted when pressed that sometimes late at night, strange things happened. Amber Court remains a paradox. Part hotel, part housing block, part ghost story. For some, it is a cheap place to live. For others, it is a destination of horror. But for all who walk its hallways, there's an undeniable feeling, one of unease, of being watched, of inhabiting a place where the past refuses to let go. From the haunted halls of Malaysia's Amber Court, our journey takes us to Europe, to the rugged mountains of Italy, where another forgotten place has been given a second life. For 50 years, the tiny village of Santo Stefano di Sassenio in the Abruzzo region stood nearly abandoned. Its stone houses crumbled, its narrow streets lay silent, and its people had long since moved away in search of work and opportunity. The once vibrant settlement was becoming a ghost town, a relic of a bygone era. But then came an extraordinary idea. Instead of tearing the place down or leaving it to decay, visionaries decided to transform the village itself into a hotel. Not one single building, but an entire scattered community that guests could live within. The project would cost around 10 million euros, but its goal was clear: to breathe life back into the abandoned heart of the Apennines. This unique concept is called albergo diffuso, literally a scattered hotel. Unlike traditional hotels, the albergo diffuso does not concentrate its rooms in one place. Instead, the rooms are spread out across existing houses, each restored to preserve its original character. Guests might check in at what was once a cattle shed, then walk down cobbled streets to sleep in a centuries-old cottage. When visitors first arrive, they are struck by the sensation of time travel. There are no televisions, no plastic furnishings, no minibars. Instead, the rooms are lit by old ceramic light switches, furnished with woolen blankets woven by hand, and scented by with smoke and citrus peel, just as they were in the old days. Even the soap is made according to traditional recipes, using olive oil and beeswax without modern chemicals. To outsiders accustomed to luxury hotels, this might seem rustic, even uncomfortable. The mattresses are hard, the windows are tiny, and the nights, high in the mountains, can be bitterly cold. But for those who come here, that is the point. They are not paying for comfort. They are paying for authenticity. Behind this project is financier Daniele Kilgren, who invested much of his inheritance to preserve the village. He wanted to prove that culture and commerce could coexist, that history itself could be a business model. His gamble paid off. Tourists came, not only from Italy, but from Germany, Britain, Japan, and beyond. And with them came money, jobs, and hope. Today, Santo Stefano is alive again. Shops have reopened, locals have returned to repair the homes of their ancestors, and crafts once thought lost have been revived. In a small wool shop, Valeria demonstrates how she dyes sheep's wool red with local wine, just as her family had done for centuries. Her turnover has increased tenfold thanks to the hotel project. In a cafe, the owner prepares coffee the traditional way. Sugar whipped with strong espresso, poured into ceramic cups, and topped with sweet cream. Tourists not only taste the drink, but step into the rhythm of a lifestyle preserved from another century. Visitors are also invited to join workshops, baking focaccia in centuries-old ovens, learning shepherding traditions, or making sheep's cheese from milk they help to collect. In these simple acts, the gap between past and present collapses. Manager Nunzia, who once worked as a scientist in a museum, now oversees the project. She insists on authenticity down to the smallest detail, even spraying rooms with fragrance developed from local traditions, a scent of chimney smoke and lemon peel, recalling a time when families would throw citrus rinds into their fires to perfume the air. The concept has inspired others. Across Italy, nearly 80 villages have adopted the albergo diffuso model, saving themselves from abandonment. Even large tour operators are taking notice, eager to capitalize on the growing desire among travelers for experiences that feel genuine and rooted in history. But for the residents of Santo Stefano, this project is more than tourism. It is a rebirth. The medieval village, once on the verge of vanishing, is now alive with visitors, craftsmen, and children once again playing in the streets. It is proof that forgotten places can find new life, not by erasing the past, but by embracing it. For the tourists who come here, the hard beds and freezing nights matter little. What they gain is something far more precious, a sense of connection to a way of life that once seemed lost forever. From the mountains of Italy, our journey continues east to Taiwan, where another lost place tells a story not of rebirth, but of abandoned dreams. Just outside the bustling capital city of Taipei, in the coastal town of Wanli, stands a bizarre and haunting sight. Rising from the overgrown landscape are clusters of pod-like buildings, their rounded forms resembling flying saucers that have landed and been forgotten. Locals call them the UFO houses, a futuristic holiday village that never became what its creator had envisioned. The project began in the early 1970s, the vision of a wealthy businessman named Mr. Sun Ming, who owned factories producing toothpaste and soda. His dream was bold: to create a seaside resort for the rich and fashionable, a place where the elite of Taiwan could escape for luxury holidays by the ocean. The houses, made of fiberglass, were designed with sweeping curves, bright colors, and interiors that echoed the space-age optimism of the era. At first glance, they seemed like something from a science fiction film. Circular windows, angular structures, and even entire buildings shaped like futuristic capsules dotted the coastline. From a distance, the village looked as though it had been built for astronauts, or perhaps for another world entirely. But the dream collapsed almost as quickly as it began. By the late 1970s, the resort was already failing. The houses, though futuristic in design, proved uncomfortable in reality. In Taiwan's hot summers, the fiberglass walls turned the interiors into ovens. In the damp winters, the lack of insulation made them unbearably cold. Visitors stopped coming. Slowly, the village was abandoned. Walking through the site today feels like entering a forgotten film set. Some houses have collapsed, their floors rotted through, leaving gaping holes where kitchens and living rooms once stood. Others remain eerily preserved, with bedsheets still on the mattresses and newspapers scattered on the floor. One such newspaper, found inside a decaying pod, bore the date 1991, the last trace of life before the owners walked away for good. The reasons for the abandonment go beyond mere discomfort. Taiwan is a land of superstition, and many locals believe that spirits still wander here. Behind the UFO village lies an overgrown cemetery. Graves left untended are thought to release restless spirits, and for many Taiwanese, this was enough to cast a permanent shadow over the resort. Every summer, during the festival known as Ghost Month, locals avoid the sea altogether, believing the gates of the underworld open and the spirits of those who drowned in shipwrecks rise to wander the earth. For a seaside holiday village, this cultural belief proved devastating. The hottest season of the year, when tourists should have flocked to the coast, was instead a time when most people stayed far away. The UFO houses became symbols of misfortune, a failed dream haunted by superstition, weather, and bad planning. And yet, among the ruins, there are still signs of life. A man named Mr. Tao has made one of the pods his home. With its fiberglass bathroom and single-room layout, it is simple, but he keeps it warm with air conditioning and dehumidifiers. He lives here rent-free, tolerated by the authorities, and enjoys the peace and isolation the place provides. Surprisingly, Mr. Tao is not alone. One of his neighbors, a wealthy businessman who once worked in Hong Kong, has spent a fortune transforming his pod into a luxurious seaside retreat. Beneath his home, in a basement meant for storage, he has built a high-tech living room complete with massage chairs, model airplanes, and modern comforts. But even he admits the battle with the elements is endless. Typhoons regularly flood the homes, bringing sand, water, and destruction. Repairs cost tens of thousands of euros, and storms have already forced him to rebuild his living room more than once. Out of the original 93 houses, only 2 remain inhabited today. The rest stand as skeletal reminders of failed vision, slowly crumbling under the weight of time, weather, and myth. The UFO village of Wanli is both fascinating and tragic. A futuristic dream that never became reality, a place where modern ambition collided with nature and tradition. Now it is a playground for urban explorers, photographers, and the occasional drifter who seeks solitude in its alien silence. For Mr. Sun Ming, the man who dreamed of a seaside paradise, the UFO houses were meant to be a symbol of progress and wealth. Instead, they became an enduring monument to abandonment, a lost place where the future itself seems to have been forgotten. Three places, three very different stories, yet each one linked by a common thread. What happens when human ambition collides with time, with nature, and with the unpredictable power of fate? In Malaysia, the Amber Court Hotel was meant to be a shining jewel of the highlands, a place of relaxation, comfort, and prestige. Instead, it became a half-abandoned shell, its corridors echoing with whispers of the past. For some, it is home. For others, it is a nightmare. But either way, it stands as a reminder that even the newest of buildings can age into ruins when promises fade and reputations sour. In Italy, the village of Santo Stefano di Sassenio faced the same fate. But instead of crumbling into nothing, it was given new life. Its stone houses, once cold and empty, are now filled with the laughter of tourists, the smell of bread rising in wood-fired ovens, and the sound of shepherds sharing their stories. Here, the past was not buried but revived. And in doing so, it has shown the world that lost places do not always have to remain forgotten. And then there is Taiwan's UFO village, a place where the future itself was imagined, built, and then abandoned, a dream of tomorrow that collapsed almost before it began. Today, the pods still stand, silent and broken, gazing out to the sea as if waiting for visitors who will never come. They are monuments to ambition without foresight, a vision too strange, too impractical, and too haunted to survive. Together, these places form a haunting mosaic. They ask questions of us. Why do we build? Why do we abandon? Why do we return to ruins, to ghosts, to places we once turned away from? Perhaps it is because lost places tell us something about ourselves. They show us the fragility of our plans, the limits of our control, and the way time erases even our boldest visions. Yet they also reveal resilience. The Italian village survived because people dared to imagine a new use for old stones. Amber Court survives because people, despite the rumors, continue to make it their home. And UFO houses, strange, impractical, and failing, still shelter those who choose solitude over society. For travelers, these sites are more than curiosities. They are windows into forgotten histories. Each cracked wall, each moss-covered car, each empty pod whispers a story of lives once lived, of dreams once pursued, of a world that changes faster than we can hold on to it. To walk through these places is to walk through memory itself. Memory not your own, but belonging to strangers whose voices you will never hear, whose footsteps you will never follow. And yet, in that silence, there is a connection, a sense of standing where others once stood, of seeing what they once saw, of being part of something that endures long after people have gone. Lost places are not only about decay, they're also about survival. They show us that even in ruin, there is beauty. Even in abandonment, there is meaning. And even in silence, there is a story worth telling. The Amber Court Hotel, the village of Santo Stefano, and the UFO houses of Wanli are three such stories, each different, each unforgettable. They remind us that the world is filled with places that do not appear on tourist maps, places that carry scars, mysteries, and truths that ordinary destinations cannot offer. For some, these are warnings. For others, they are treasures. But for all of us, they are mirrors, reflecting the fragile line between creation and destruction, between hope and despair, between dreams and the harsh reality that so often swallows them whole. And so, the question remains, what will become these places? Will Amber Court collapse into rubble? Will the Italian village continue to thrive? Will the UFO houses finally be swallowed by the sea? Only time will tell. But until then, they remain haunting, enduring, waiting for those who dare to look closer. Because in the end, lost places are never truly lost. They live on in the stories we tell, in the echoes we hear, and in the shadows that remind us how thin the line is between glory and ruin. When we speak of lost places, we often imagine ruins, broken walls, abandoned corridors, empty streets. But lost places are not only physical. They're emotional landscapes, shaped by memory, fear, and longing. Each of the sites we have explored carries more than just crumbling bricks or rotting beams. They carry the weight of human stories, of choices made and abandoned, of dreams that never quite found their way. Take the Amber Court Hotel in Malaysia. On paper, it was nothing extraordinary, a modern resort built in the 1990s, strategically located in the Hentang Highlands, not far from casinos that attract millions. Developers imagine tourists filling its rooms, gamblers seeking cheap stays after long nights at the tables, families enjoying mountain air. For a while, it worked. The hotel was young, clean, and promising. But buildings, like people, gather reputations. And once a place is whispered about as cursed, it is difficult to erase that stain. Paranormal stories began circulating. Guests spoke of children's voices in empty corridors, of shadows that moved in rooms thought deserted, of doors that rattled without cause. The horror film shot there only cemented its identity. What should have been a holiday destination became something else entirely, a destination for those who wanted to be afraid. Yet even within these stories of ghosts, life continued. Construction workers sought cheap lodging. Taxi drivers carved out shared apartments. Shopkeepers sold food and clothes in improvised arcades. For them, Amber Court was not a haunted house, but an affordable shelter. And that duality of fear and survival is what makes the place so unsettling. It raises a question. Do the ghosts come from the walls, or do they come from us? From our fears, our imaginations, our hunger for stories that explain the unease we cannot shake. Perhaps Amber Court is haunted not by spirits, but by reputation itself. A reputation strong enough to make the living uneasy even as they fold laundry, play cards, and try to sleep. Now shift to Italy's Santo Stefano di Sassanio. Here the story bends in another direction. For decades, the village suffered a slow death, not from fear, but from absence. Young people left for cities, searching for work. Families abandoned homes that had been in their blood for centuries. Earthquakes damaged buildings. Slowly, silence crept into the narrow streets. Yet, silence is not always permanent. Where some saw ruins, others saw possibility. The Albergo Diffuso model turned decay into opportunity. By preserving what was old instead of replacing it, the village gained new breath. Tourists came not for luxury, but for authenticity, for the chance to wake to the sound of sheep bells, to bake bread in a centuries-old oven, to sleep in a bed built as it was 100 years ago. It is ironic, in a world obsessed with modernity, technology, and comfort, people now pay to experience what their ancestors desperately left behind. They pay for cold nights, hard beds, and the simplicity of life without plastic or screens. Why? Perhaps because within those walls, stripped of convenience, lies a kind of truth, a reminder of slowness, of connection, of traditions that anchor us to something larger than ourselves. And then there is Taiwan's UFO village. Unlike Santo Stefano, it was never old. Unlike Amber Court, it was never haunted by whispers of spirits. Its failure was different, a failure of vision. Its designer imagined the future, but he did not account for reality. Fiberglass pods looked spectacular on the brochures, but suffocated their inhabitants in heat. The dream of the elite retreat collapsed under the weight of practicality. But even there, stories linger. The abandoned cemetery at its edge gave rise to whispers of unsettled spirits. Ghost Month rituals kept locals away from the sea. Belief intertwined with decay, and together they buried the project. Today, the pods stand like relics from another world. Alien not only in shape, but in spirit. And yet, even here, people endure. Mr. Tao tends his pod, living quietly, embracing the solitude. His wealthy neighbor, pouring money into repairs, proves that even failed dreams can find stubborn guardians. What links all these places is not simply abandonment. It is the human refusal to let go entirely. We may walk away, but someone always stays. A shopkeeper in Amber Court, a shepherd in Santo Stefano, a drifter in Wanley. They hold the torch, even as the walls crumble, even as others forget. These stories are not just about architecture or history. They are about us, about the fragile balance between ambition and humility, about the way nature reclaims what we build, about the power of stories, ghost stories, folk traditions, myths, to shape how we see the bricks and beams around us. In Malaysia, a damp stain becomes a blood stain in imagination. In Italy, a cold bed becomes a treasure of authenticity. In Taiwan, a futuristic pod becomes a haunted shell of superstition. What does this tell us? That places are never just places. They are canvases onto which we project our fears, our hopes, and our need for meaning. When we examine these places, the Amber Court Hotel in Malaysia, the reborn Italian village of Santo Stefano, and the UFO pods of Taiwan, we might be tempted to see them as isolated curiosities. Strange failures, unusual successes, oddities scattered across the world. But they are part of a much larger story, a story repeated again and again in different corners of our planet, because lost places are everywhere. There are hotels in the deserts of Nevada, built in the heyday of gold rush towns, now nothing more than skeletons of wood and rust. There are entire cities in China, vast urban projects, standing almost empty because the people they were built for never arrived. There are seaside resorts on the Black Sea, once glittering under communist regimes, now collapse into ruins as economies shifted and travelers looked elsewhere. In each of these stories, the pattern is familiar. Human ambition pushes forward, building monuments to prosperity, progress, or escape. But time, nature, and circumstance have the final say. Earthquakes shake foundations. Storms batter walls. Economies falter. Beliefs shape behavior. And slowly, what once was new and filled with promise becomes silent. But silence is never absolute. In Amber Court, Malik and his friends shuffle cards late into the night, laughing to drown out the howling wind. In Santo Stefano, tourists knead dough under the guidance of villagers, their hands sticky with olive oil and flour. In Taiwan's UFO village, Mr. Tao sweeps his pod, his small radio buzzing with static as he looks out at the waves. Even in ruins, life continues. And so, lost places teach us something profound. They remind us that the world is always in flux. Nothing stays the same. The hotel that terrifies some is home to others. The village abandoned by locals becomes salvation for tourists. The futuristic resort that collapsed under superstition and storms still provides shelter for those who choose solitude over society. There is, too, a deeper human fascination with ruins. Why do we seek them out? Why do urban explorers risk collapsing stairways, crumbling beams, and toxic mold to photograph abandoned factories, asylums, or mansions? Why do tourists travel miles to wander ghost towns, to stand among wreckage, to whisper in places where no one lives? Perhaps it is because ruins are honest. They strip away the illusions of permanence that we wrap around our lives. They remind us that wealth, power, and glory all fade, that today's shining towers may be tomorrow's haunted shells, that the world remembers differently than we do. And yet, ruins are not only about death, they are also about transformation. Out of ruin grows moss. Out of moss, saplings. Out of saplings, forests. Abandonment creates new ecosystems, new habitats, new balances. A building left behind becomes a refuge for birds, bats, and insects. A village reborn becomes a place for new generations to discover heritage. A failed futuristic resort becomes a legend, whispered about, photographed, shared across the internet, immortalized in stories like this one. In that way, nothing is ever truly lost. It only changes. This is why lost places hold such power over our imagination. They are reminders of impermanence, yes, but also of endurance, of the way life, in one form or another, always returns. Amber Court may crumble, but people will still play cards in its halls. Santo Stefano may creak with the weight of centuries, but bread will still rise in its ovens. Wanli's UFO pods may crack in the storms, but light will still glow from Mr. Tao's small window as he sits listening to the sea. And we as visitors, as listeners, as storytellers, will continue to return to these places, drawn not only by curiosity, but by the way they reflect ourselves, our ambitions, our failures, our resilience, our fears. Because in the end, every lost place tells us a story we already know but often try to forget, that nothing we build lasts forever, but the stories we tell about them just might. Why do these places captivate us so deeply? Why do we lean into the chill of a haunted hotel, the silence of an abandoned village, or the alien strangeness of UFO houses left behind? The answer lies not only in history, but in psychology. We are drawn to ruins because they remind us of our own fragility. They tell us that even the strongest walls will one day crack, that wealth and vision can vanish in the blink of an eye, that the stories we write in stone are never immune to time. And yet, standing in those ruins, we feel a connection to those who came before, to the lives once lived, to the dreams once dreamed. Superstition deepens this connection. In Malaysia, whispers of ghosts keep people awake at night. In Taiwan, belief in restless spirits drives entire communities away from the sea during Ghost Month. In Italy, traditions preserved in wool, bread, and soap create a bridge to a world that otherwise would have been forgotten. Lost places feed our imagination. They stir fear, awe, wonder, and melancholy. They remind us that behind every ruin, there was once hope, and that in every ruin, something still survives. The Amber Court Hotel stands as both a home and a horror. The Italian village of San Stefano thrives again as a living museum. The UFO pods wanting to decay by the sea, yet still house those who will not let go. 3 places, 3 destinies, 1 truth, that nothing we build is ever permanent, but nothing is ever entirely erased. And perhaps that is why we tell these stories. So the silence of these places is not total. So the voices of those who once lived there are not lost to time. This has been World's Scariest Hotel, Abandoned Village, and UFO Houses, Lost Places, rewritten and retold for you here on Zimo Voice. If you found these stories thought-provoking, haunting, or inspiring, share your thoughts with us in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Backhand index pointing right, do you believe in ghosts haunting abandoned hotels? Backhand index pointing right, would you spend a night in a forgotten village? Backhand index pointing right, or do you see these places as warnings, reminders that not every dream survives? Your voice matters, and your perspective adds life to these lost places once again. And if you enjoyed documentaries that uncover hidden truths, forgotten histories, and the mysteries of our world, don't forget to subscribe to Zimo Voice and turn on notifications so you never miss the next journey. Because here, every story has a voice, and sometimes even the lost deserve to be heard.